Stoic quotes on preparation, motivation, survival, mindfulness, time, life, desire, and noise are useful in stirring thoughts on how they apply to our lives today. Most of them are from years ago. Some were never intended to be published. They are from private journals like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and others were written by students taking notes from their teachers. Few of these are from modern Stoics as well. View these and think about their meaning. Pull out a notebook and write down what it means to you. It is interesting how human nature hasn't changed over thousands of years. It still rings true today. That person has lost their children. You too can lose yours. That person received sentence of death. Your innocence too stands under the hammer. This is the fallacy that takes us in and makes us weak while we suffer misfortunes that we never foresaw that we could suffer. The person who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing because an artful life requires being prepared to meet and withstand sudden and unexpected attacks. Marcus Aurelius. If you've seen the present, then you've seen everything as it's been since the beginning, as it will be forever. Same substance, the same form, all of it. You'll meet this future, the same weapons you've met everything else in your life with. Whatever is coming, you can handle, because it's already here, because it's always been with you. Marcus Aurelius. Back over the past, with its changing empires that rose and fell, you can foresee the future too. Marcus Aurelius. Tooth and nail to the following rule: not to give in to adversity, never to trust prosperity, but always take full note of fortune's habit of behaving just as she pleases, treating her as if she were actually going to do everything it is in her power to do. Whatever you have been expecting for some time comes as less of a shock. What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect. Unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. The fact that it was unforeseen has never failed to intensify a person's grief. This is a reason for ensuring that nothing ever takes us by surprise. We should project our thoughts ahead of us at every turn and have in mind every possible eventuality, instead of only the usual course of events. This is why we need to envisage every possibility, to strengthen the spirit to deal with the things which may conceivably come about. Rehearse them in your mind: exile, torture, war, shipwreck. Misfortune may snatch you away from your country. We do not want to be overwhelmed and struck numb by rare events as if they were unprecedented ones. Fortune needs envisaging in a thoroughly comprehensive way. Commander never puts such trust in peace that he fails to prepare for a war. Everyone faces up more bravely to a thing for which he has long prepared himself. Sufferings even withstood if they have been trained for in advance. Those who are unprepared, on the other hand, panic-stricken by the most insignificant happenings. It is in times of security the spirit should be preparing itself to deal with difficult times. While fortune is bestowing favors on it, then is the time for it to be strengthened against her rebuffs. Set aside now and then a number of days during which you will be content with the plainest of food, very little of it, with rough, coarse clothing. You will ask yourself, is this what one used to dread barley porridge? A crust of bread? Water do not make a very cheerful diet. Nothing gives one keener pleasure. The ability to derive pleasure even from that. The feeling of having arrived at something which one cannot be deprived of by any unjust stroke of fortune. When you first rise in the morning, tell yourself, I will encounter busybodies, ingrates, egomaniacs, liars, jealous and cranks. They're all stricken with these afflictions because they don't know the difference between good and evil. As I have understood the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, know that these wrongdoers are still akin to me, that none can do me harm or implicate me in ugliness, nor can I be angry at my relatives or hate them. We are made for cooperation. Marcus Aurelius. We must undergo a hard winter training and not rush into things for which we haven't prepared. Here's a lesson to test your mind's mettle. Be part of a week in which you have only the most meager and cheap food, scantily and shabby clothes, and ask yourself if this is really the worst that you feared. Because when times are good, You should gird yourself for tougher times ahead. When fortune is kind, soul can build defenses against her ravages. So it is that soldiers practice maneuvers in peacetime, recting by. Walk the long gallery of the past, empires and kingdoms succeeding each other without number. You can also see the future. Surely it will be exactly the same, able to deviate from the present rhythm. It's all one whether we've experienced 40 years or an eon. More is there to see. Marcus Aurelius. Sometimes we lack the motivation to get started, improve. We fall into a negative state of mind. Think it is going to be difficult, it won't be fun. Should remind ourselves that these are just thoughts. Usually successful people are not pessimists. One thing all fools have in common is that they're always getting ready to begin. They're always putting things off, always saying, do it later. Seneca. Busy with life's purpose, toss aside empty hopes, active in your own resume. If you care for yourself at all, do it while you can. Marcus Aurelius. That's why the philosophers warn us not to be satisfied with mere learning, to add practice and then training. As time passes, we forget what we learned and end up doing the opposite, hold opinions the opposite of what we should. It is in vain to ruminate upon or even reflect upon the authors or causes of our present misfortunes. Instead of looking backwards, we should rather exert ourselves. You let your attention slide for a bit, think you will get back a grip on it whenever you wish. Instead, bear in mind that because of today's mistake, everything that follows will be necessarily worse. Is it possible to be free from error? By any means. It is possible to be a person always stretching to avoid error. We must be content to at least escape a few mistakes by never letting our attention slide. Because a thing seems difficult for you, do not think it impossible for anyone to accomplish. Marcus Aurelius. It's not because things are difficult that we dare not venture. It's because we dare not venture that they are difficult. A gem cannot be polished without friction, or a man without trials. Seneca. We are more often frightened than hurt. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca. Judge you unfortunate because you have never lived through misfortune. You have passed through life without an opponent. No one can ever know what you are capable of, not even you. It isn't the things themselves that disturb people, the judgments that they form about them. If you want something good, from yourself. You can bind up my leg. Not even Zeus has the power to break my freedom of choice. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. It is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. Marcus Aurelius. We should always be asking ourselves, is this something that is or is not in my control? Take a lyre player. He's relaxed when he performs alone. Put him in front of an audience, and it's a different story, no matter how beautiful his voice or how well he plays the instrument. Why? Because he not only wants to perform well, he wants to be well received. The latter lies outside his control. If you really want to escape the things that harass you, what you're needing is not to be in a different place, but to be a different person. Appearances to the mind are of four kinds. Things either are what they appear to be, or they neither are nor appear to be, or they are and do not appear to be, or they are not and yet appear to be. Rightly to aim in all these cases is the wise man's task. It's not what happens to you, how you react to it that matters. We have the power to hold no opinion about a thing, to not let it upset our state of mind. Things have no natural power to shape our judgments. Marcus Aurelius. Today I escaped from a crush of circumstances. Better put, I threw them out. The crush wasn't from outside me, and my own assumptions. Marcus Aurelius. My reason choice is as indifferent to the reason choice of my neighbor as to his breath and body. However much we've been made for cooperation, ruling reason in each of us is master of its own affairs. If this weren't the case, the evil in someone else could become my harm. God didn't mean for someone else to control my misfortune. Marcus Aurelius. There are things in life which are advantageous and disadvantageous, both beyond our control. If a person gave away your body to some passerby, you'd be furious. you hand over your mind to anyone who comes along, so they may abuse you, leaving it disturbed and troubled. Have you no shame in that? A person who doesn't know what the universe is doesn't know where they are. A person who doesn't know their purpose in life doesn't know who they are or what the universe is. A person who doesn't know any one of these things doesn't know why they are here. What to make of people who seek or avoid the praise of those who have no knowledge of where or who they are? Marcus Aurelius. From the very beginning, make it your practice to say to every harsh impression, "You are an impression and not at all what you appear to be." Next, examine and test it by the rules you possess, first and greatest of which is this: whether it belongs to the things in our control or not in our control. If the latter, be prepared to respond, "It is nothing to me." Epictetus says we must discover the missing art of assent, pay special attention to the sphere of our impulses. They are subject to reservation, the common good, that they are in proportion to actual worth. Marcus Aurelius. Try praying differently, see what happens. Instead of asking for, "Way to sleep with her," try asking for, "Way to stop desiring to sleep with her." Instead of a way to get rid of him, try asking for a way to not crave his demis. Instead of a way to not lose my child, try asking for, "Way to lose my fear of it." Marcus Aurelius. Nothing outside my reasoned choice can hinder or harm it. My reasoned choice alone can do this to itself. If we would lean this way whenever we fail, we would blame only ourselves and remember that nothing but opinion is the cause of a troubled mind and uneasiness. By God, I swear we would be making progress. Remember then, if you deem what is by nature slavish to be free, what is not your own to be yours, you will be shackled and miserable, naming both gods and other people. If you deem as your own only what is yours and what belongs to others as truly not yours, no one will ever be able to coerce or to stop you. You will find no one to blame or accuse. You will do nothing against your will. You will have no enemy. No one will harm you because no harm can affect you. Forced, as it seems, by circumstances into utter confusion, get hold of yourself quickly. Be locked out of the rhythm any longer than necessary. Be able to keep the beat if you are constantly returning to it. Marcus Aurelius. Life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future. Time is like a river, made up of the events which happen, a violent stream. As soon as a thing has been seen, it is carried away, another comes in its place, and this will be carried away too. Marcus Aurelius. You live as if you were destined to live forever. No thought of your frailty ever enters your head. How much time has already gone by you take no heed. Squander time as if you drew from a full and abundant supply, all the while that day which you bestow on some person or thing is perhaps your last. Remember, matter, tiny your share of it. Time, brief and fleeting your allotment of it. Fate, small a role you play in it. Marcus Aurelius. Diogenes of Sinope said we sell things of great value for things of very little, vice versa. It is said that if you would have peace of mind, see yourself with little. Wouldn't a better saying be do what you must and as required of a rational being created by public life? This brings not only peace of mind of doing few things, the greater peace of doing them well. Since the vast majority of our words and actions are unnecessary, rallying them will create an abundance of leisure and tranquility. As a result, shouldn't forget at each moment to ask, is this one of the unnecessary things? We must corral not only the unnecessary actions but unnecessary thoughts too, so needless acts don't tag along after them. Marcus Aurelius. How disgraceful is the lawyer whose dying breath passes while at court, an advanced age, pleading for unknown litigants and still seeking the approval of ignorant spectators. Life seems like a huge topic, but it can just boil down to improving each day. Every evening ask yourself, how did I improve today? We should focus on improving ourselves in the outside world, not on the things that have affected us. Happiness comes from within, and not from external forces. A better wrestler, not a better citizen, a better person, a better resource in tight places, a better forgiver of faults. Marcus Aurelius. Explain your philosophy. Embody it. Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for a kindness. No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom and bear fruit and ripen. First rule is to keep an untroubled spirit. Second is to look things in the face and know them for what they are. Marcus Aurelius. If you hear that someone is speaking ill of you, instead of trying to defend yourself, you should say, "He obviously does not know me very well, since there are so many other faults he could have mentioned." Epictetus. I've often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself, on the opinion of others. Marcus Aurelius. Books are the training weights of the mind. They are very helpful. It would be a bad mistake to suppose that one has made progress simply by having internalized their contents. Just say you have read books. Show that through them you have learned to think better, be a more discriminating and reflective person. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. Error is human. To persist in the mistake is diabolical. Anything or anyone capable of angering you becomes your master. There are two things that must be rooted out in human beings: arrogant opinion and mistrust. Arrogant opinion expects that there is nothing further needed. Mistrust assumes that under the torrent of circumstances can be no happiness. Throw out your conceited opinions, for it is impossible for a person to begin to learn what he thinks he already knows. Remember to conduct yourself in life as if at a banquet. Something being passed around comes to you. Reach out your hand and take a moderate helping. Does it pass you by? Don't stop it. It hasn't yet come. Don't burn in desire for it. Wait until it arrives in front of you. Act this way with children, spouse, or position, with wealth. One day it will make you worthy of a banquet with the gods. Of all the things that are, some are good, others bad, yet others indifferent. Good are virtues and all that share in them. Bad are the vices and all that indulge them. The indifferent lie in between virtue and vice and include wealth, health, life, death, pleasure, and pain. You should ever turn your will to things outside your control in order to impress someone. Be sure that you have wrecked your whole purpose in life. Content then to be a philosopher in all that you do. If you wish also to be seen as one, show yourself first that you are, and you will. In public, avoid talking often and excessively about your accomplishments and dangers. However much you enjoy recounting your dangers, it's not so pleasant for others to hear about your affairs. When it comes to money, where we feel our clear interest, we have an entire art where the tester uses many means to discover the worth, just as we give great attention to judging things that might steer us badly. When it comes to our own ruling principle, yawn and doze off, accepting any appearance that flashes by without counting the cost. First off, let the force of the impression carry you away. Say to it, hold up a bit and let me see who you are and where you are from. Let me put you to the test. You say good fortune used to meet you at every corner. The fortunate person is the one who gives themselves a good fortune. Good fortunes are a well-tuned soul, good impulses and good actions. Marcus Aurelius. Older and wiser voices can help you find the right path, if you are only willing to listen. You have proof in the extent of your wanderings. You never found the art of living anywhere, not in logic, nor in wealth, fame, or in any indulgence. Nowhere. Where is it then? Doing what human nature demands. How is a person to do this? Having principles be the source of desire and action. Principles. Those to do with good and evil, indeed in the belief that there is no good for a human being except what creates justice, self-control, courage, and freedom. Nothing evil except what destroys these things. Marcus Aurelius. All study of philosophy and reading should be for the purpose of living a happy life. Should seek precepts to help us, noble and courageous words that can become acts. Should learn them in a way that words become works. Would you be walking in your predecessor's footsteps? Surely we'll use the older path. If I find a shorter and smoother way, blaze a trail there. Ones who pioneered these paths aren't our masters but our guides. Truth stands open to everyone, it hasn't been monopolized. Don't act grudgingly, selfishly, without due diligence or to be a contrarian. So don't overdress your thought in fine language. Be a person of too many words and too many deeds. Cheerful, not wanting outside help or the relief others might bring. A person needs to stand on their own, not be propped up. Marcus Aurelius. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, and having few wants. When children stick their hand down a narrow goody jar, they can't get their full feist out and start crying. A few treats and you will get it out. Curb your desire. Set your heart on so many things. You will get what you need. It is essential to make oneself used to putting up with a little. Even the wealthy and the well-provided are continually met and frustrated by difficult times and situations. It is in no man's power to have whatever he wants. He has it in his power not to wish for what he hasn't got, and to cheerfully make the most of the things that do come his way. Freedom isn't secured by filling up on your heart's desire, by removing your desire. So concerning the things we pursue, and for which we vigorously exert ourselves, we owe this consideration. Whether there is nothing useful in them, most aren't useful. Some of them are superfluous, while others aren't worth that much. We don't discern this and see them as free. They cost us dearly. I was shipwrecked before I even boarded. The journey showed me this. Much of what we have is unnecessary. How easily we can decide to rid ourselves of these things whenever it's necessary, never suffering the loss. Remember that it's not only the desire for wealth and position that debases and subjugates us, but also the desire for peace, leisure, travel, and learning. It doesn't matter what the external thing is, the value we place on it subjugates us to another. Where our heart is set, there our impediment lies. It's ruinous for the soul to be anxious about the future, miserable in advance of misery, engulfed by anxiety that the things it desires might remain its own until the very end. Such a soul will never be at rest. Longing for things to come, it will lose the ability to enjoy present things. Remember that your ruling reason becomes unconquerable when it rallies and relies on itself, so that it won't do anything contrary to its own will. The only reason to study philosophy is to become a better person. Anything else, as Nietzsche said, is merely a critique of words by means of other words. No school of thought believed this, in the power of deeds over ideas, more than Stoicism, ancient philosophy that dates to Greece in the 3rd century BC. It was Seneca, Stoic philosopher of the Roman era, far removed from the academy, would say quite bluntly that there was no other purpose to reading and study, not to live a happy life. This is not the role philosophy plays in the modern world. Today it's about what smart people say, big words they use, paradoxes and riddles they can baffle us with. No wonder we dismiss it as impractical. It is. This book will be about a different and far more accessible type of wisdom, kind that comes from people like Seneca, a man who served his country at the highest levels, endured exile and loss, struggled with ambition and personal flaws, ultimately died tragically and heroically, trying to make good on his theories. Like the so-called pen and ink philosophers, the type was derisively known even 2,000 years ago, Stoics were most concerned with how one lived. Choices you made, causes you served, principles you adhered to in the face of adversity. Cared about what you did, not what you said. Philosophy, one that we need today more than ever, was a philosophy not of ephemeral ideas but of action. Its 4 virtues are simple and straightforward: courage, temperance, justice, wisdom. It should not surprise us then that we can learn just as much from the Stoics' lived experiences, works, as we can from their philosophical writings, words. Wisdom offered by Cato, Younger's published works, is scant. A lifelong public servant, he was too busy in office and in battle to write down more than a few sentences. The story of how he comported himself, with ironclad integrity and selflessness, amid the decline and fall of the Republic, teaches more about philosophy than any essay. Along those lines, little survives to us about the theories of Diotimus, early 1st century BC Stoic, the legend of his literary fraud shows us how easily even righteous people can go astray. Same goes for the life of Seneca, whose eloquent letters and books survive to us at length, yet must be contrasted with the compromises required by his job in Nero's administration. It's not just tea. Wisdom is the most important virtue to Stoics, and all other virtues are seen as a form of practical wisdom. Virtues of courage and moderation are the forms of Stoic self-control required to live consistently with wisdom and justice, especially when beset by challenges from without and unruly desires and emotions from within. Epictetus's famous slogan, "Endure and renounce," appears to refer to these two virtues of self-mastery. However, Stoic virtue needs to be understood quite broadly in terms of ethical principles, as well as having a good character and good attitudes toward other people. Virtue is not just a matter of what's going on in your head, but also of what's going on in your family and social relations, your intentions, your actions, and your pattern of life as a whole. From another perspective, Stoic virtue refers to the perfection of our own nature, like an acorn growing into an oak tree. We have the capacity for wisdom. Virtue consists in fulfilling that potential within ourselves. Virtue ultimately entails living in accord with our own nature as rational beings, but also in harmony with the rest of mankind, and in agreement with nature as a whole. In practice, that means facing difficult people and physical hardships with good grace, patience, and equanimity. Central Stoic claim was that virtue is ultimately the only thing that really matters. It is the only thing that is truly good. It is the only thing that can bring us well-being and fulfillment. Cultivating virtue ought to be our top priority, above all other things, if we want to live a good life. Stoics used the word eudaimonia to describe someone who lives the best type of life. It's usually translated as happiness. However, it doesn't refer to a happy feeling, but rather something more rounded and complete. Some people think that flourishing or fulfillment are better translations. You can also think of eudaimonia as meaning happiness, in the archaic sense, the opposite of being in a hapless or wretched condition. Stoics also believed that we are naturally inclined to recognize the overriding value of virtue, that we are born with an instinctive wish to benefit others, to express this in social involvement. From this natural basis, we may come to see the bond between ourselves and all human beings. Conversely, the Stoics claimed that all those external things that people often pursue, a good job, money, success, fame, etc., cannot guarantee us happiness. They could well be parts of a happy life, but on their own, will never deliver genuine fulfillment unless we also have the virtues. Stoics refer to everything external to our own character as indifferent, in terms of attaining the good life. This term causes some confusion, but you could simply think of it as meaning not worth getting upset about. Some morally indifferent things are to be preferred or rejected, that is, lightly sought or avoided with the reservation that the outcome is never absolutely under our control. Hence, Stoics said it is rational and indeed wise for us to prefer having these things in life within reason. It is just that personal fulfillment depends ultimately on developing virtue, rather than on having the opportunity to acquire these external things, which is always partly in the hands of fate. In the popular imagination, Stoic is someone who denies or represses their emotions in a potentially unhealthy way, like a robot or Mr. Spock from Star Trek. However, this is definitely a misconception, albeit a very widespread one. Central Stoic claim was that our emotions are ultimately the product of the judgments that we make. It's because we think external events, what really matters, we feel anger or fear. As we get a better understanding of what really matters, what is up to us, these unhealthy or irrational emotions will be replaced by healthy, rational ones. In short, as we develop ethically, as we see the absolute value of virtue, our emotional life will change for the better. The same way that faulty value judgments lead to unhealthy emotions and desires, so too will wise judgments lead to rational and healthy ones. For example, Stoics claimed there were 3 broad categories of good desires and emotions that are part of a happy and fulfilled life and which naturally follow as a consequence of developing virtues attitudes, overcoming unhealthy desires and emotions. The Stoic sage is not simply an emotionless cold fish. In fact, the ancient Stoics repeatedly said their goal was not to be as unfeeling as someone with a heart of stone or iron. Rather, it was to develop the natural affection we have for those close to us in accordance with virtue, or if you prefer, love ourselves and others with wisdom. This ultimately means extending our ethical concern to humankind in general, developing an attitude of philanthropy. It is a man's especial privilege to love even those who stumble. And this love follows as soon as you reflect they are akin to you, that they do wrong involuntarily through ignorance, that within a little while they and you will be dead. This above all, the man has done you no harm. He has not made your ruling faculty worse than it was before. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 7:22. Stoics also acknowledge the existence of certain reflex-like aspects of emotion, physiological reactions such as blushing, stammering, being startled. These typically remain involuntary, beyond our direct control, though we can choose how we respond to them and whether we allow ourselves to dwell on, escalate our first impressions and initial reactions into full-blown passions, an excessive or unhealthy sort. It's one thing to be startled or taken by surprise, and another to continue needlessly dwelling on and worrying about important things. Founders of Stoicism said that the central doctrine of their philosophy, goal of life, could be summed up as living in agreement with nature. What did they mean by this? Well, we know that they thought it was synonymous with living in accord with virtue. As you learned earlier, Stoics thought of nature in at least 3 key ways. True inner nature, which they believed to consist in our capacity for reason. 2. Nature of society, and our relationship with the rest of mankind. 3. Nature of our external environment as a whole, universe around us. Stoics believed that leading a life with virtue as your goal is the natural way for a human being to live. They encourage us to see that if we create a wholeness and coherence of moral character in ourselves, are matching the coherence and unity that they see in the world as a whole. In contrast, a foolish and vicious person is perpetually divided from his own true nature, conflict with other people. Marcus Aurelius talks about walking on your own to a quiet place at daybreak, meditating upon the stars and the rising sun, prepare for the day ahead. You can also do this at home, sitting on the end of your bed, standing in front of the mirror in your bathroom. Still think of the sun rising against a backdrop of stars. 2. A specific philosophical principle that you want to rehearse and repeat it to yourself a few times before imagining how you could put it into practice during the rest of the day. You might choose the key general Stoic theme. Some things are under our control, whereas others are not. To think about giving more importance to being a good person, acting well, treating things you cannot control as ultimately much less important. Alternatively, you might pick a specific virtue that you want to cultivate in order to prepare yourself mentally for your day ahead. For example, imagine in broad outline how you would act if you showed more wisdom, justice, courage, moderation. 4. Practice this meditation for about 5-10 minutes, picking out key events or specific challenges that might arise. Once you've gotten into the habit of doing this, try imagining greater challenges in the day ahead, such as some of your plans not going as you hope, dealing with difficult people. As you consider a possible difficulty, think about how you could tackle it with a Stoic principle or virtue. Say to yourself at daybreak, shall come across the meddling busybody, ungrateful, overbearing, treacherous, envious, the antisocial. All this has befallen them because they cannot tell good from evil. Meditations 2.1. So evening meditation. Epictetus and Seneca both allude to a form of philosophical self-analysis that was practiced regularly each evening by Stoics. Contemplative exercise they describe was actually borrowed from Pythagoreanism. For example, Epictetus quoted the following passage from the Golden Verses of Pythagoras to his students. This process is not just about record-keeping. It's about pausing, taking a step back from things, and gaining what therapists call psychological distance from your initial upsetting thoughts and feelings. It will help you to become a detached observer of yourself for a while. Write things down as soon as possible. Doing so will help you to view your thoughts in this detached way, observing events and describing them in an objective manner. Note the date and time of the event. You started to feel angry or afraid, for example. Briefly describe the actual situation you were facing, e.g., perhaps someone criticized your work, or maybe someone offered you some junk food while you were trying to lead a healthy life. What related thoughts went through your mind? Stoic psychology held that our emotions and desires fundamentally depend upon our thoughts, particularly our value judgments. He forewarned that most people find it difficult at first to identify the specific thoughts that are responsible for their feelings. You'll probably need to work on this. With practice and study, it should become easier. Are you telling yourself that something external is very good, desirable, or bad, upsetting? For example, someone who feels anxious and angry about being criticized might come to realize that they're thinking, "I must be respected at work," and placing great importance or intrinsic value on other people's opinions of them, instead of wanting to do their job well for its own sake. As we'll see, this is the central question that Stoics use to evaluate their impressions. Is it up to me? They meant, is this thing that my feelings are about under my direct control? Again, don't worry too much about this for your first day or so, because as you learn more about Stoicism, you'll get better at posing this question. For example, you might observe that other people's opinions of you are ultimately beyond your direct control. All you can control in this situation is your response to their words, perhaps your plans for how to act in the future. Even your previous failings are no longer within your power to change. You can't rewrite the past. Everyone can be a philosopher. Everyone. We all have that ability. We were born with it. Human beings are rational, thinking, reasoning creatures. Nature has made us that way. Nature created the giraffe to reach higher and the cheetah to run faster and the bull elephant to be stronger. So did it create the human being to be wiser? Potentially. In ancient Greece, the birthplace of philosophy and philosophers, a person was known as a philosopher by their way of life, not by their academic credentials or scholarly publications. Philosophy was a highly valued topic of conversation and thought. More importantly, it was an ideal to be embraced and practiced. Life was lived better with philosophy. Same could be and should be true today, only most of us can't be bothered. We use just as much of our reasoning ability as we have to and no more. Year after year, we struggle to feed ourselves and our family, pay the mortgage, keep the car running, wear nice clothes, and if there's any time or money left over, spend it on countless distractions and mindless diversions that contemporary society is only too happy to offer. As we get older, we don't gain in wisdom, we only gain in weight. It's always been like this for most people. We accept this priceless gift of higher intelligence as our birthright, which it is. We spend this inheritance on grabbing and grasping at far more than we really need. At the end of the day, when the weary mind is ready to rest, we let it drift away by watching yet another episode of our favorite TV show, or cheering on a millionaire athlete to score another goal. Acquiring what we need to live on this planet is not difficult. We have made it so, and our awesome intelligence is obsessed with a life of consumption and endless busyness. It's normal. At least it's normal in that it's common. Still, there have always been a few who make the effort to rise above the common herd because they are so amazed by our reasoning faculty and the promise of wisdom that they choose to develop a noble mind, rather than wallow in the mud of accumulation. They choose to live closer to the gods, to the beasts in the barnyard. It's people we call philosophers, lovers of wisdom. As soon as we decide to pursue wisdom, it's when the difficulty really begins. Everyone can be a philosopher. Everyone can be wise. How is it done? What is the best way to achieve humanity's highest goal? Unfortunately, finding the path, let alone walking upon it, is not that easy. It should be, but like so much in our contemporary world, pursuit of wisdom has become unnecessarily complex. If we study philosophy at the university, we're at the mercy of the professionals, the academics. It's been 2,000 years since they cared anything about our goal. We study wisdom with the theologians, another problem arises. Faith. Sooner or later, religions deliberately turn their backs on the pursuit of truth and the exercise of reason, require the mind to believe in faith. That's why religions are called faiths. Jewish faith, Christian faith, Muslim faith, etc. But what do? Why should we be bothered? Hardly anyone else gives a damn, so why should we? Does wisdom promise that makes it so great? Who wants to be a philosopher anyway? Sounds boring and hard. Promise hitchhiking through the Carolinas in the Deep South in 1964. Couldn't help but notice the sharecroppers' shacks lining old country roads for miles and miles through tobacco and cotton fields. Shacks were occupied by dirt-poor people working like slaves, 100 years after abolition, from sunup to sundown, earning a wage that was barely enough to stay alive. There were no luxuries here. Children were barefoot by necessity. Shoes were worn only for Sunday school, if they were worn at all. Everywhere one looked, there was depression and gloom. Almost everywhere. Every couple of miles, there was a sharecropper shack that was different. It was built the same, probably by the same builder. It didn't look the same as the shack on either side of it. Unpainted, cracked, and dirty clapboard siding was painted with whitewash. Regular paint, mind you. It would be too expensive. This was cheap. White paint mixed with water so that a gallon might paint one whole side of the house. It would be flour sacks dyed a bright color and cut for curtains instead of faded newspaper or nothing at all. Front yard would be picked up and raked, and flowers would grow in flower beds by the front door. To one side or peeking around back, there were always vegetables growing in a weeded garden. This is what philosophy promises. It doesn't matter, Somar. Regardless of all else that befalls you, there's always one thing that is in your power: nobility of your character. Seneca, great Roman Stoic, said that only a fool would go to buy a horse and carefully examine the saddle and riding tackle but ignore the horse. It's the same for you. Circumstances surrounding your birth and place in this world are your saddle and riding gear. Nobility of your character, that which is inside of you, is what really matters. This is what philosophy promises, what Stoic philosophy teaches, and what the Stoic Handbook is all about. Stoic tradition, Stoicism, is a living philosophy. That means is that Stoic philosophy is more than just great thoughts organized into a complete and coherent vision of reality. It's first and foremost a philosophy to live by, practical application of ancient wisdom, way of life, a guide to the choices one makes in this life. From its beginnings, it was the only philosophy addressed to all human beings, regardless of gender, race, or social class. Even women and slaves were welcome to follow this path, be treated as sisters and brothers, a notion considered laughable by other philosophers who, along with Aristotle, classified them somewhere above brute beasts and below free men. Stoicism is alive. The reason it is still alive after more than 2,300 years because it is universally adaptable and available to people of every color, class, and culture. Something else evolves. As the human race learns and grows, so does our philosophy. It evolves because of the strength and conviction of the Stoics themselves. Stoics have a tradition of independent thought. We like it that way. We of the Stoic school do not follow a tyrant, as Seneca said. This is not to say that we have an eclectic hodgepodge of assorted ideas collected here and there. It is not. Its inner core of orthodoxy moves very slowly, glacially, expanding and refining with the ages. Its foundation is secure because it is built upon the power of a single idea. The goal of life is to live in agreement with nature. That is our motto. Live in agreement with nature, live according to nature, live in harmony with nature. Zeno of Citium, founder of our school, coined the phrase and concept. He wasn't working alone. He was following a path already begun by two of the greatest thinkers in the Western world, Heraclitus and Socrates. Zeno is the father of the Stoic school, Heraclitus and so. Stoicism is a wisdom philosophy. What that means is that it's a philosophy about how to live life and live it well, philosophy was founded in Athens, Greece, about 2,300 years ago by a man named Zeno. After studying with the Cynics for several years, he studied at Plato's Academy and started his own school at the Central Market in Athens. Zeno started his school by standing on a porch in the market and talking to anyone who happened by. In time, he had a regular group of men standing and talking philosophy there with him. Porch became his school. Word for porch in Greek is stoa. The men who met there to talk philosophy soon became known as the men of the porch, Stoics. Stoicism became the preeminent philosophy of ancient Greece and Rome, flourished for nearly 500 years. Re-emerged as a popular philosophy in the Renaissance when people returned to reason, rather than faith, find answers about how to live. Today our philosophy and those who live by it are alive and well all over the world. www.thestoicregistry.org. Q. Is it true that Stoics repress their emotions and feelings? A. No. This is an old misunderstanding. Emotions and feelings are normal and natural, and sometimes they're even essential to our survival. There are times when being afraid and running away is the wisest course of action. Where the misunderstanding comes from is the Stoic belief that emotions are based upon a judgment. All of us, including Stoics, have emotional reactions to events that can cause anger, grief, and fear. After the initial instinctive reaction, it is our judgment about the event that either inflames or cools the emotion. Shakespeare said in Hamlet, "There is nothing either good or bad. Thinking makes it so." Shakespeare was a student of Stoic philosophy, by the way. He often used Stoic themes in his plays. We believe it is our judgment that makes something either good or bad, not the thing in itself. If we are unhappy, it was some judgment that inflamed the emotions and made us unhappy. Happiness is everyone's desire. Stoicism is all about increasing your happiness and living well. Only virtue is always good. Only the lack of virtue is always bad. Do not believe there is any evil in nature, only in the behavior of human beings. That comes about when people deliberately choose what is harmful to themselves. See, you don't believe anyone can harm you, only that you can harm yourself when you choose not to live according to nature. We don't condemn others for lacking virtue, because they are already punishing themselves by their behavior. No one can hurt me because I alone am responsible for the nobility of my character. That is the Stoics' highest ideal, noble character. Rich men and women are a dime a dozen. Noble character is rare and the greatest of all. Stoicism teaches you how to build a noble character. Stoic motto, live according to nature. Sounds good. What does that mean exactly? Zeno, founder of Stoicism, was the first to use that phrase, live according to nature. And what it means exactly is that Stoics look to nature as their guide to life. We believe that nature teaches us everything we need to know about how to live well in this world. That is why Stoic physics is so important. In antiquity, physics was known as natural philosophy. By studying nature, we come to know ourselves and what makes us happy and successful and wise. Later, another great Stoic, Panaetius, expanded the original motto to include not just nature in general, but also the nature of the individual. Each one of us has a unique personality, including different talents and capacities we can develop to achieve our highest ideal. So living according to nature also means to live in accordance with one's own nature. Epictetus, Roman Stoic teacher, said, "If you have assumed any character beyond your strength, you have both demeaned yourself in that and neglected one which you might have filled with success. Who is live according to both human nature in general, one's individual nature in particular, yes, the manner of speaking. We do not all believe in God in the same way. All Stoics are pantheists because nature is our God, literally. You can be an atheist or a deist or an agnostic, still be a Stoic in good standing. Key to what kind of Stoic you are depends on whether you believe that the intelligence and processes of nature are conscious, unconscious. Nature conscious or unconscious. Human beings were created by nature, have consciousness. We the only oneies. Do not believe in any one certain answer to this question. If you're looking for certainty, there are two ways you can go about it. First and most reliable way is for you to die. You will know for sure. Second way, that you may consider less drastic, is to join a religious group that promises eternal life. Fortunately, this is a promise that they cannot prove. If you have faith in a religion, such as the Christians or Muslims, they will tell you what to believe about life after death. If you demand evidence, reason, or proof, then nothing is certain. You can neither empirically prove nor disprove life in any form beyond the grave. No one can. Religions that tell you otherwise are asking you to have faith in myths, legends, and wishful thinking. Our philosophy never requires such faith. Stoics are more comfortable with disagreement than with faith, and we have always disagreed about this matter. Regarding life after death, we're mostly agnostic. However, we all do agree on one thing. If you live according to nature in this life, it's highly unlikely you'll have anything to worry about in the next. If there is one. Teachings as a philosophy. Homosexuality was never an issue in ancient Greece when Stoicism was founded. It isn't today. With regard to racial and gender issues, only the Stoics were truly enlightened. Their philosophies were often contemptuous and disparaging. There has never been any doubt with us. We are all equal. One little-known fact is that Stoics were the first to condemn rape. A time when rape was far more common than it is even today. The excuse for such behavior was, God of love, Eros, made me do it. I was driven to this passion by Eros, and powerless to resist. Stoics said that excuse was nonsense. Rape was wrong. You do have the power to resist. No God can compel you to behave badly. No one has the right to violate another person's body. No excuses. Period. Of course, we still believe that way today. Getting back to the matter of equality, key here is reason. In antiquity, our greatest scientist, Aurelius, traveled widely, studied many different peoples and cultures, and confirmed what Stoics have always believed. Human beings are the same everywhere. The thing that unites us all, no matter how differently we may appear, is our greatest faculty, ability to reason. He was a nobleman of Ephesus. Some say he was a hereditary king who set aside his crown to study philosophy. He was undoubtedly a sage, mystic genius, the first cosmologist of our philosophy. Heraclitus has fascinated thinkers from Socrates to Goethe, from Aristotle to contemporary quantum physicists. He is the greatest of the Ionian sages, founding father of Western civilization, creator of philosophy, a diviner of the fundamental essence of the cosmos. He is also known as the Obscure One, reputation acquired in his own time, for a vague and riddling style that some believe he deliberately adopted to elude even the most erudite scholars. Unfortunately, what he wrote, in its original form, has been lost in antiquity. All that remains are fragmentary references from many sources, some reliable, some unreliable, from Plato to medieval monastic scholars. From these fragments we discover remarkable parallels between the observations of Heraclitus and modern physicists 500 years later. God, called the Logos, reason, intelligence, whole made up of the sum total of all opposites, constantly in motion, birthing, living, dying, and being born again. In all of these attributes of nature, Heraclitus would include a rational consciousness and providence. Shortly after the death of Heraclitus, another extraordinary man was born, sculptor by trade, a man who described himself as resembling a frog, but who had been told by the oracle at Delphi that he was the wisest of all the Greeks. That man, of course, Socrates. Socrates was frankly puzzled over the oracle's judgment, so he set out to the marketplace of Athens to discover what it meant. How it could be that he was the wisest of the Greeks. What he found was that while others professed wisdom without being aware of their ignorance, he, at least, was aware that he knew nothing. With this knowledge came the conviction that he must search for wisdom about right conduct, right way to live. He might lead the citizens of Athens in their moral and intellectual development. Socrates came to be viewed as a pest and a troublemaker by the city elders. He was sentenced to death by poisoning, drinking hemlock, became the first martyr of philosophy. His disciples who were with him to the end went on to establish their own schools of philosophy based upon two profoundly different interpretations of his teachings. Plato, aristocrat, admired Socrates the thinker, established. Lucius Annius Seneca, k.a. Seneca the Younger, was a statesman, a Stoic philosopher, and a man of letters. Became chief minister of the Roman Empire for several years. Nero was too preoccupied with hedonistic debauchery to be bothered. Seneca's administration was reputed to be one of the soundest periods of imperial government in its history. A fit of jealousy, Seneca was later commanded by Nero to commit suicide. Following passages have been selected from Seneca's Letters from a Stoic, provide a sampling of his philosophy and style. They are based upon R.M. Gumaer's 1917 translation, have been edited by Eric Weigart, to reflect a more contemporary punctuation and prose. V. 5. First thing which philosophy promises is fellowship with all humanity. In other words, longing, community. Part company with this promise if we are unlike other men. We must see to it that the means by which we wish to draw admiration, not absurd and odious. Our motto, as you know, is live according to nature. It is quite contrary to nature to torture the body, hate refinement, be dirty on purpose, eat food that is not only plain, disgusting. Just as it is a sign of luxury to seek out dainties, it is madness to avoid that which is customary, can be purchased at a reasonable price. Philosophy calls for plain living, not for penance. We may be plain and neat at the same time. Approve of moderation. Our life should observe a happy medium between the ways of a sage and the ways of the world at large, in order that the day may yield some amusement before it is spent, that our leisure may be relieved of a tedium that irks us, builds and shapes the soul, orders our life, guides our conduct, shows us what we should do and what we should leave undone, sits at the helm, directs our course as we waver amid uncertainties. Without it, no one can live fearlessly or in peace of mind. Countless things that happen every hour call for advice. Such advice is to be sought in philosophy. Truth will never be discovered if we are content with discoveries that have already been made. Besides, he who follows another not only discovers nothing, is not even investigating. Then, shall I not follow in the footsteps of my predecessors? Shall indeed use the old road. If I find one that is a shortcut and is smoother to travel, shall open the new road. Those who have made these discoveries before us are not. Of all the human faculties, you will find only one which is capable of both contemplating itself, of approving or disapproving of itself. Does grammar possess the contemplating power? No. When you write something to your friend, grammar will tell you what words you should write. Whether you should write or not, grammar will not tell you. So it is with music as to musical sounds. Whether you should sing at the present time and play on the lute, do neither. Music will not tell you. Faculty then will tell you, that which contemplates both itself and all other things. What is this faculty? Rational faculty. This is the only faculty that we have received from nature, which examines itself and all other faculties. As was then fitting, which is best of all and supreme over all, the only thing which the gods have placed in our power, that we may make the right use of appearances. All other things they have not placed in our power. Now, it is in our power to look after one thing, to attach ourselves to it, prefer to look after many things, to be bound to many things, to body and to property, to brother and to friend, to child and to slave. Since then we are bound to many things, are burdened by them and dragged down. God created non-rational animals to make use of appearances, created us to understand the use of appearances. It is therefore enough for them to eat and drink and to sleep and to copulate, to do all the other things which they do. For us, whom nature has also given the intellectual faculty, these things are not sufficient. God has created man to be a spectator of God and of his works, not only a spectator of them, also an interpreter. For this reason, it is shameful for man to begin and end where the non-rational animals do. Rather, he ought to begin where they begin and end where nature ends in us, in contemplation and understanding, and in a way of life conformable to nature. Matters are brought before you which are equal to the reasoning power which you possess. You turn away from this power at the very time when you ought to be the most open and discerning. Why do you not thank the gods for allowing you to be above the things which are not in your power, and only made you accountable for those which are in your power? As to your parents, gods have left you free from responsibility. The same is true with respect to you. What is the cause of agreeing to anything? The fact that it appears to be true. It is not possible to agree to that which appears to be false. Why? Because this is the very nature of the understanding. To incline to the true, be dissatisfied with the false. In matters of uncertainty to withhold agreement. What is the proof of this? It is now day, persuade yourself. You can. It is now night. It's impossible. Take away your belief that it is day. Impossible. Persuade yourself that the total number of stars are an even or an odd number. Impossible. Any man agrees to that which is false, be assured that he did not intend to agree to it as false. Every soul is unwillingly deprived of the truth, as Plato says. The falsity seemed to him to be true. A man think that a thing is useful to him and not choose it. Cannot. If you wish to succeed in, or if you wish to maintain a will conformable to nature, you have every security, every facility, you have no troubles. Or if you wish to maintain what is in your own power and is naturally free, and if you are content with these, what else do you care for? Who is the master of such things? Who can take them away? If you choose to be modest and faithful, who shall not allow you to be so? If you wish to maintain externals also, your poor body, your little property, your little reputation, I advise you to make from this moment all possible preparation, then consider both the nature of your judge and your adversary. If it is necessary to embrace his knees, embrace his knees. If to weep, weep. If to groan, groan. Or when you are a slave to externals, then be a slave, and do not resist, and do not sometimes choose to be a slave, and sometimes choose not to be a slave. But with all your mind, be one or the other, either free or a slave, either instructed or uninstructed, either a noble character or a mean one. Remember then this general principle, and you will need no other. If you desire externals, you must of necessity be subjected to the will of your master. And who is your master? Anyone who has power over the things which you seek or try or avoid. Everyone is improved and preserved by corresponding acts. The carpenter by acts of carpentry, the grammarian by the acts of good grammar. But if a man accustoms himself to write ungrammatically, of necessity his art will be corrupted and destroyed. Thus modest actions preserve the modest man, and immodest actions